Hello. If you've ever had a lot of demands and responsibilities coming at you, maybe faster than you felt like you could complete them, you probably know how Lucy and Ethel felt the day they worked in the chocolate factory. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about why the human brain gets stressed out in situations like these and give you some ideas for what you can do about it. So the human brain has evolved differently from the way we might design it if it were a computer. It has sort of a weird design. We have three kinds of memory. We have like active sensory memory where we're like taking everything in from the world on one end. And on the other end, we have long-term memory, which is basically has almost infinite capacity for things that we can remember. But in between, we have short-term memory, which is very limited. So while a computer has gigabytes of RAM, can store billions of bits of information, our short-term memory literally only holds about 7 pieces of information at a time. And to hold things in short-term memory, you have to actively use them, rehearse them. So if you've ever had somebody introduce themselves to you and 30 seconds later you realize you don't remember their name, that is a totally typical human experience. It happens to everybody. It's just how short-term memory works. You have to actively be using it, rehearsing to keep things in short-term memory. And the thing is that short-term memory is your working memory. And so the things that you are working on need to be occupying those memory slots for you to be able to deal with them. So using short-term memory to remember the other things that you're not doing right now that you need to do really interferes with your ability to do work. And that really is the source of a lot of stress around the things that we have to do. Fortunately, people have done some thinking about how to overcome these limitations. And I want to share with you one system today called Getting Things Done. This is the solution, I think. Unfortunately, the full Getting Things Done system by David Allen is really kind of complicated and high-powered. It's used by top executives all over the world. There's a whole book explaining it, which I've read a couple of times. But honestly, it's a bit too complicated for high school students. You could learn it, but it's more than you need. So what I would like to show you is a simplified version, simplified Getting Things Done. So this system has 6 steps. First, you need to collect all the stuff you need to do. You need to sort those things and figure out what you need to do with them. You need a place to store the things that you're not doing right now. You need to actually do the work. You need to track the work you're getting done. And then finally, kind of the goal of it all is to have the ability to relax because you know that the things you need to do are getting taken care of. So let's talk through these steps one at a time. So first, collection. Think about where all the stuff you need to do comes from. Where are the possible places? Obviously, there's things like Canvas. Teachers post assignments that you're supposed to do. It can be tempting to think that that is a to-do system, but unfortunately, it only allows other people to tell you what to do and doesn't give you a good way to give yourself tasks. You get emails that suggest things that you need to do. You probably have conversations with your teachers, with your parents, even with your friends that suggest things to you that you want to do. And you may write things down in a notebook. This is kind of starting to think through like, well, if I'm having a conversation and an idea pops into my head, where do I put it? Do I email it to myself? Do I write it down in a notebook that I'll look at later? Do I write it on my hand? Do you have like a physical inbox that you put a note card in? That's a collection system. So once you've collected these things, the next step is to sort them. And in sorting them, it's worth thinking about two different aspects of a thing that's on your plate. What is the desired outcome? In other words, what's the end result or the product that you're aiming towards? And realizing that that is different from the next action that you need to take. So there's a thing, a product that you're going to get to eventually, and then there's a series of actions, verbs that you need to do to get to that outcome. It's also worth thinking about Dwight Eisenhower's quote, "What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important." Thinking about your to-dos on these two axes of importance and urgency can help clarify what you need to get done and when you should do it. So ideally, things that are important don't become urgent, but sometimes they do. And then obviously, the things that are important and urgent, you're going to need to do pretty much right away. Other things that are important don't actually have to be done by you. And so that's something that you should definitely consider is like, is this something that I can delegate to someone else so I don't have to worry about it? Tasks that are important but not urgent, you can take care of them later and you can defer them. And this is not procrastinating. This is just being realistic and effective. Set aside the things that you don't need to do right now in a place where you know they will come back up and you will get them done before they become urgent. And then finally, if something is not actually important, you should consider discarding it. You don't have to do everything, and it can lessen your load to just decide, you know what, I'm not going to do that. So before we leave this slide, I do want to say that when something is important and urgent and you're like, this needs to get done, it's worth thinking about, is this something that I can do in less than 2 minutes? Because if you can just like do it in the midst of your sorting very quickly, not getting sucked into a bigger task, but something like, I just need to reply to this email, it's going to take 30 seconds. You probably should just do it right now. Get it out of the way, and then you don't have to worry about it at all. Okay, so we've decided we have 4 different actions we can take. Let's look at what those look like. So first of all, as we said, if you decide that you're not going to do something because it's not actually important, put it in the trash. Don't think about it again. Ah, relief. Don't have to worry about it. There are these things that you need to do that take longer than 2 minutes. We're just going to hold them and set them aside for a few minutes while we deal with the rest of the things that we're sorting. And we're going to focus on the things that are getting deferred. So if there's a task that you need to do eventually, you're not going to do it right now, you need to store that somewhere, like a to-do list. And once it's in your to-do list, you don't have to be actively holding it in your working memory anymore. Put it on a to-do list and you will get to it if you have the habit of using your to-do list. This is really good for things that don't have a particular time when they need to be done. Sometimes there are things that are need to be done at a very specific time, like going to a dentist appointment or checking in for a flight. Those are better to put on a calendar with a reminder that will pop up or be checked on the day so that you can not worry about them until it becomes relevant. And then in between, there are some to-do list applications that let you hide things, but then it'll pop them back onto the list on a particular date. That can be useful. The danger of a calendar is that if you put something on a calendar that's just like, I don't want to worry about this until this day, but it has to get done eventually, and maybe it's not like an event. Um, if you ignore the calendar reminder and don't do it, thinking, oh, I'll do that later, it's no longer in your system. And so I think it's something to think carefully about whether you're using a calendar or to-do list, and what combination to do. And then finally, the things you've delegated, you may actually need to put that on your to-do list, like go have a conversation with this person, or maybe that becomes a calendar event, like set an appointment to talk with this person about getting them to do it. And then also things that you delegate, sometimes you still have some responsibility for them. So it might be a to-do to check back in with the person you delegated it to. But lots of times you can give it to somebody else and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. Less stress. Okay, so we've stored these things. We're going to be checking our to-do list. We're going to have our calendar popping things up. We have some things that we've decided we need to do immediately. How do you get work done? So I'm going to give you 4 quick techniques. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about these. You can ask me later if you want more detail, but these are some techniques to help you actually get work done efficiently. One is the Pomodoro technique. This is a strategy for overcoming procrastination. The thing about procrastination is that it is a self-rewarding habit. When you procrastinate, you're having a bad feeling about getting started on something, and as soon as you decide to procrastinate, you've literally rewarded yourself for not starting working. So the idea of the Pomodoro technique is, rather than setting a huge goal to get something done, you just decide, I'm going to spend 25 minutes doing some work, getting started. Set yourself a timer. At the end of 25 minutes, you give yourself a reward for having gotten started. And you do this regularly, and you will soon push yourself out of that habit of procrastination. You should give your work your undivided attention. So this idea of working memory only having 7 slots, you want to use all 7 of those slots for the task at hand, especially if it is a brain-intensive task. Do one thing at a time. You can't be working on more than one thing at a time. You can switch rapidly back and forth, but you're going to be more efficient if you focus on one thing. In an environment that is free from distraction. So set yourself up for that. There's this idea of eating your frogs first, and these frogs are like raw slimy frogs, not like fancy frog's legs. The idea is you have a bunch of things on your to-do list that you need to get done. Maybe you start with the most annoying, difficult thing that you don't want to do and just get it out of the way. Because then it's just, like, each task is going to get easier and easier to keep working on. On the other hand, sometimes you're feeling demoralized and you have big, daunting tasks ahead of you. Maybe it makes sense to get started with something that's easy, that will give you a little win and give you that little shot of dopamine that'll propel you into yeah, I'm getting stuff done, and you move on to those harder tasks. It takes a little bit of mindfulness to decide which of these strategies to use. Maybe you start with a little victory and then you eat your frogs second and then move on to the thing that you're really going to enjoy, like reading that novel for Utopia Dystopia or whatever. So 4 strategies for getting work done. When you get stuff done, it's time to keep track. So first thing, especially when you're working on bigger project, if you've done one action, think about what is the next action, the next logical step, and get that into your to-do system or onto your calendar so that you can trust that you will get back to it. If you're using the Pomodoro technique, if you've gotten some stuff done, give yourself a small reward. Make sure that your reward time isn't longer than your work time. A good ratio actually is, a 5-minute break or a 5-minute YouTube video, even though there are no YouTube videos less than 20 minutes anymore, for 25 minutes of work. And maybe most important and simplest of all is just checking things off your to-do list. At first, that's not going to feel like a big deal, but if you like kind of like talk yourself up a little bit, like, yeah, I got it done, that actually becomes a little reward itself. And then the whole point of this is, if you've tracked the stuff you need to get done, if you're collecting everything and getting it into your system, if you can go back through your to-do list at the end of your work session and say, there's nothing that I need to do immediately. Everything is taken care of. Everything that I need to do later is set up so that I will see it and get reminded of it. You can relax because you've got it under control. So this is a little diagram of the whole system. I'm going to run through some real quick questions that you can maybe spend a little bit more time on to think about how to set this up for yourself. So first is, where will you collect your stuff? And will everything get caught in those places? That's the goal. Write it all down, get it out of your head so that you're not relying on your short-term memory. When will you sort your collected stuff? Is this going to be the beginning of the day, after your last class? Are you going to take a break and have dinner first and then sit down? But what is your cue for this habit? It needs to be something that you do consistently. And so what is the reminder that causes you to do the sorting? Where will you store your tasks so that they won't get lost and you can trust that they're going to get taken care of? That's something we will talk more about later, options for storage systems. When and where will you work so that you can do so efficiently? How will you reward yourself for your progress? I think thinking that through so that you actually do it and train yourself is important. And finally, like, imagine how you're going to be able to relax when everything is taken care of so that you can motivate yourself to actually set up and use a system like this. So I hope that's helpful, and that's Simplified Getting Things Done. Thanks.